Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're charting a course through the really fascinating origin story of the Gaia mission, that incredible space observatory, mapping the stars with just phenomenal precision.
hmm
But here's something you might not know. Gaia's first concept, totally different from the brilliant monolithic design we see up there today.
Absolutely, and that's what we're digging into. Our goal today is to sort of unravel the crucial decision behind Gaia's ultimate form. Why did they choose what they did, the interferometer versus the single solid mirror?
Right.
We'll explore the why and reveal something key, that Gaia's initial identity as an interferometer was actually, well, vital to it ever getting off the ground. The sources we've got really lay this out.
Yeah, it's a great story. And for those of you listening, if you want to get a solid grasp on complex topics like this, without getting lost in the technical weeds, we're going to unpack this history clearly, engagingly,
There are definitely some unexpected twists.
for sure. Okay, let's dive in. It all started with a big vision, didn't it? A long-term plan.
It did. You have to go back to late 1983. The European Space Agency, ESA, they put out an open call, called it the Horizon 2000 program.
Horizon 2000.
Yeah, basically asking the scientific community, what should we do next? What are the big missions? A really ambitious, community-driven effort to shape European space science for, well, for decades.
And the response was huge, right? Something like 68 proposals.
68 came pouring in, yeah. 30 in astronomy, 34 focused on the sun and solar system physics.
Yeah.
Just a massive amount of scientific interest.
Wow. So how did ESA even start to sift through all that?
Well, they set up an ad hoc committee led by Johann Bleecker, experts from all over Europe. Their job was basically to evaluate all these ideas and figure out which ones made the most sense to pursue.
And they had a system, like
Yeah,
categories.
exactly. A structured approach. They grouped them by scale. Cornerstones, the really big flagship missions, then medium and small missions, each with a sort of budget ballpark in mind.
Okay. And the first cornerstones were big names, weren't they?
Yeah, the initial ones selected included what became Rosetta, the comet chaser,
Right.
Doc XMM Newton, the X-ray observatory,
Uh-huh.
and FIRST, which later became the Herschel Space Observatory, looking at the far infrared. But here's the crucial bit for our story. When they look beyond those initial selections, sort of future possibilities, one of the key technologies they flagged was interferometry.
Ah, interferometry. Okay, so that was explicitly on their radar early on. That really sets the stage.
It does. And it wasn't just a passing mention. The follow-up plan, Horizon 2000 Plus LADA, kept stressing the importance of developing Europe's capabilities in interferometric techniques.
So a strategic push. They wanted to be leaders in this complex field.
That's the picture, yes. And you saw other ambitious interferometry ideas bubbling up around then, too, like the Darwin mission concept,
Darwin, what was that aiming for?
the really big prize,
Hmm.
directly imaging Earth-like planets around other stars. The idea was using 4 separate telescopes, flying in perfect formation. An interferometer, but, formation flying.
Wow. That sounds incredibly difficult.
It was. And ultimately, Darwin, well, it got shelved. Too complex, too expensive, even with some NASA collaboration. It just highlights the massive technological challenge space-based interferometry presented back then.
Definitely. Okay, so interferometry is a goal, but it's tough. What about other astronomy avenues? You mentioned astrometry earlier, measuring star position.
Right. Even before the big interferometry push really solidified, there was interest there. In 1993, there was a proposal called RUMMER, a medium-class mission specifically focused on astrometry.
Rumor. And it had ambitious goals, too.
Oh, yeah. Aiming to survey maybe 100 million stars,
Yeah.
down to pretty faint magnitudes, 15 to 17, with accuracies in the milliarc second or even sub-milliarc second range. Serious precision for the time.
So why didn't Rumor make the cut?
Competition. It was up against what eventually became the Planck mission studying the cosmic microwave background.
Ah, Planck. Another huge success.
Exactly. Planck won out in that selection round. So it tells you 2 things. 1, there was definitely appetite for high-precision cosmic measurement. But 2, getting a mission selected was really, really tough. The bar was high.
Okay, so we've got the scene. ESA wants interferometry. Astrometry is bubbling up but faces competition. Now, where does Gaia itself enter the picture?
Well, it's interesting. ESA actually has study teams looking specifically at space interferometry way back in the early 80s.
Really? That early?
Yes. And one of the key figures in this story who coordinated some of that work, actually mentioned later, around 95, having his own doubts about its immediate scientific use back then. Things like, collecting enough light, finding enough suitable bright targets, the sheer engineering headache.
So even the experts exploring it saw major hurdles. But the idea still had momentum.
It did. And then came a key moment. September 1993. There was a meeting focused on lunar interferometry, setting up interferometers on the moon.
On the moon. Okay.
And according to the source material, this meeting kind of jogged one particular scientist into action. He wrote down notes saying he decided to put in a proposal for a project which I call GAIA, for Global Astrometric Interferometer for Astrophysics.
GAIA. All caps, that's the original name.
That's the original. And apparently that very same evening, he met with Leonard Lindegren, another key figure. The notes say, quite dramatically, this is when Gaia was born.
Wow.
They saw a chance, basically, to use that existing Horizon 2000 plus interest in interferometry, but apply it to astrometry, a new angle.
So leveraging the strategic interest for a specific science goal.
Precisely. They quickly drafted a proposal, submitted it to ESA in October 1993. So yeah, the mission we know today really started life as an interferometer concept, GAIA, capital letters.
Okay, so why GAI? Why go the interferometry route for astrometry? What was the thinking?
There were really two main reasons driving that initial concept. First, it was, you could say, programmatic or strategic.
Yep.
Proposing an astrometry mission that used interferometry seemed like a smart way to potentially fit into that specific cornerstone slot that Horizon 2000 Plus had sort of earmarked for an interferometer.
Aligning with ESA's strategic goals. Clever.
Right. But the second reason was purely scientific. It was about the potential for much, much higher astrometric accuracy compared to a single mirror telescope of a similar size or mass.
Okay, explain that. Why does interferometry offer potentially better accuracy?
Well, it comes down to physics. A telescope's ability to see fine detail, its resolution, is limited by the wavelength of light it's observing and the size of its aperture, its main mirror or lens.
Right, bigger mirror, sharper view.
Exactly. Now, for an interferometer, the aperture isn't just one mirror. It's effectively the distance between the separate mirrors or telescopes.
Okay.
That's called the baseline. So by having two collectors spaced far apart, you create a much larger effective aperture. A longer baseline lets you resolve much finer angles on the sky. And for astrometry, crucially, it means you can measure star positions much more accurately for a given amount of light collected. Accuracy scales with the baseline.
Got it. So a wider baseline means potentially much better precision than a single mirror you could fit in the same rocket fairing.
That was the core idea. And this is totally different from how the final Gaia works, where they get incredible accuracy in a scanning instrument by having a single mirror that's effectively very long in the direction it scans across the sky.
Right. Two different approaches to high accuracy.
So the initial GAIA concept, it envisioned using the Ariane 5 rocket's fairing. They imagined a rigid structure, maybe 2.5 meters long, holding two primary mirrors at either end. That 2.5-meter baseline promised way better accuracy than a single mirror you could fit in that space.
And what accuracy were they shooting for?
The original goal was incredible, 10 microarc seconds at magnitude 15.
10 microarc seconds. Can you even picture that?
It's mind-bending, like seeing a human hair from 1,000 kilometers away, or the width of a coin on the moon. Just astonishing precision.
Unbelievable. And they added other science, too, right? Not just positions.
Yes, they built a really strong science case. Added multicolor photometry, measuring brightness in different colors and measuring radial velocities, how fast stars are moving towards or away from us, at least for the brighter ones.
So this interferometric GAIA looked like a powerhouse.
It did. And arguably, it kind of neatly fulfilled that Horizon 2000 interferometer placeholder, even if the specific science goal wasn't what some might have expected.
But it wasn't all smooth sailing. You mentioned pushback.
No, not universal applause initially. There was definitely some skepticism.
Why? What were the concerns?
Well, for one thing, ESA had just finished the Hipparcos mission.
The predecessor. Also a big astrometry success.
Hugely successful. So some people felt, okay, we just did astrometry. Maybe it's time for a different field to get the next big mission.
Fair point, I suppose. What else?
There was also a sort of feeling that if ESA was going to build a complex interferometer, maybe you should tackle a completely different scientific area, not just more astrometry, even if it was much better astrometry.
And the technology itself. Were people worried it was even possible, like the Darwin issues?
Exactly. Doubts about whether the tech was really ready. Could they actually build and operate such a complex, ultra-precise instrument in space, maintain that stability?
But the science case must have been compelling.
Immensely. The potential to basically rewrite our understanding of the Milky Way, its structure, how it formed, how it's evolving, By measuring a billion stars with that kind of accuracy, he was just too powerful to ignore. It won out.
So the interferometric GAIA, capital letters, became the plan, at least initially.
It became the baseline, yes.
Yeah.
The concept that went forward into detailed system studies between 1997 and 1999. ESA brought in two big industrial teams, Alenia and Astrium, to really dig into the technical details, see if it could actually be built.
And this is where the plot thickens. This is where the original interferometric dream started to face reality, especially for one of the teams.
That's right. The Alenia team, who stuck with the original interferometer design, ran into some serious problems. Big ones.
Like what? What were the main roadblocks?
Well, the biggest was probably the stability requirement. Maintaining the optical path lengths between the two sides of the interferometer is stable to the picometer level.
Picometer. We said that was tiny before.
It's ridiculously small. Across a 2.5-meter structure in space, with temperature changes, vibrations, it was just a monumental technological challenge. Maybe impossible at the time.
Okay, stability. What else?
Linked to that was just the sheer complexity of aligning everything in orbit. All the different mirrors and optical components across the two arms of the interferometer. Getting them perfectly aligned and keeping them aligned. A nightmare.
Sounds like it. Any other issues? Maybe with the detectors?
Yes, actually. The way interferometers form images, you get this pattern, and the central bright spot, the airy disk, was smaller in this design. To measure that accurately, you'd need much smaller CCD pixels in one direction, the scanning direction.
Detector challenges?
Exactly. That meant manufacturing headaches.
Yeah.
The pixels wouldn't hold as much charge, which meant you couldn't see stars as faint, brighter limiting magnitude, and maybe worst of all, it massively increased the amount of data you'd have to handle and send back to Earth.
So a cascade of problems, all stemming from the core interferometric approach.
Pretty much. Meanwhile, the other team, Astrium, they went a different way.
What did Astrium do?
They decided, fairly early on apparently, to investigate using a single monolithic primary mirror instead.
Abandoning the interferometer.
Essentially, yes. They likely recognized there might be a trade-off, maybe sacrificing a bit of that ultimate theoretical accuracy compared to the interferometer baseline.
Right.
But they clearly saw it as a much more practical, achievable path. Lower risk, lower cost, better schedule. Just more feasible engineering.
So ESA had two proposals on the table. The super ambitious but technically fraught interferometer and a more conventional but potentially less accurate monolithic design.
Correct. And the ESA evaluation team had to make the call. They looked at everything. The tech, the management plans, the schedule, the risks, the cost, all laid out in the Gaia Concept and Technology Report.
And the verdict?
Unanimous.
Yeah.
They recommended accepting the monolithic design, the Astrium approach.
Wow. So the interferometer concept was officially dropped.
It was. Now, you could argue, and maybe some did, that if they're ditching the core interferometric idea, shouldn't they maybe revisit that whole Horizon 2000-plus plan, the one that called for an interferometer?
Good point. Did that happen?
Not really, no. Because by this point, the sheer scientific impact of Gaia, now spelled with a lowercase I, kind of signifying the design change, was just undeniable. The scientific community was overwhelmingly behind it. The momentum was too strong.
The science case had won everyone over, regardless of the specific technology used to achieve it.
Exactly. Interferometry was dropped for very practical reasons. Technology, cost, risk. But, and this is the crucial twist, the main point of our deep dive today.
Yes.
The mission, the amazing Gaia we have now, might never have even been accepted back in 2000 if it hadn't started as GAIA, the interferometer.
How so? Why was that initial identity so important?
Because framing it as an interferometer initially did two things. One, it strategically clicked with ESA's stated long-term goals and their desire to build expertise in that area. It fit the narrative.
Okay, the programmatic angle again.
Right. And two, the team pushing the original GAIA proposal included key people with direct, invaluable experience from Hipparcos. They had the credibility.
Building on past success.
Absolutely. If the mission hadn't been initially presented as this cutting-edge interferometer, building on that Hipparcos legacy and tapping into the programmatic interest, well, it's possible a mission just focused on better astrometry might have struggled much more to get approved. It might have been delayed significantly.
So it needed that interferometer label, even if temporary, to get through the door.
That's the argument, and it seems pretty compelling. Interferometry got it selected, even though monoliths actually built it.
Fascinating. So let's wrap this up. The key takeaway is While Gaia today uses these incredible single-piece mirrors,
Masterpieces of engineering.
its origin story, its initial identity as GAIA, the Global Astrometric Interferometer for Astrophysics, was absolutely fundamental to it getting the green light and eventually becoming the success it is.
It's a fantastic illustration of how science progresses. Its ambition, its technology hitting limits, its strategic thinking within big programs, all mixing together.
Yeah. And for you, listening, wanting to get these insights efficiently, it just shows, doesn't it? Progress isn't neat. It's messy, full of twists, turns, ideas that get adapted or even dropped.
The real aha moment here is seeing how an initial idea, even one that doesn't make it in its original form, can be the crucial launch pad. Without the GAIA concept, we might not have Gaia today.
Exactly. Which really leaves you with a thought, doesn't it? How often does that happen? How often do ideas that seem discarded or initial paths that get changed actually end up being the essential first step for breakthroughs later on in any field?
What other big achievements have these kinds of surprising, maybe even slightly hidden origin stories?
Definitely something to ponder. The role of so-called failed ideas in the journey of innovation. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.